Hi, everyone. This is Marilyn Bradford, and I would like to welcome you to my Left Turn podcast. What is your left turn? Writing a blog, parenting in a different way, letting go of the old because you are aware of something greater. Left turns are choices we can all make. It's about a willingness to step into the unknown in any area of your life, to trust yourself, to risk creating or trying something new. It's about letting your true uniqueness shine. The greatest people who have lived, artists, statesmen, writers, explorers, musicians, have all been people willing to turn left. What capacities do you have that you have not acknowledged? What would your life and the world be like if you were willing to turn left? Welcome, everybody, to this episode of Left Turn Podcast. I'm Marilyn Bradford, and I have as my guest today an absolutely amazing woman that probably everyone would call an overachiever, but I think she just has fun in life. And that is Kalpana Raghuraman. And I hope I said that correctly or well enough.
You did.
She is a certified Access Consciousness facilitator. She's an author. She also has a dance company and is a dancer and a choreographer and a mentor to dancers. She does many, many, many amazing things. And I know that to get to the space where you are now, Kalpana, and I know you never stop choosing and going forward and expanding more, you had to have made a number of left turns. So, I'm wondering if we can start with that, just what some of the more memorable left turns you've made are.
Yeah, it's a really great, first of all, Marilyn, thanks for having me and all of you for listening. And it's a great energy already, you say left turn and kind of you're like, where are you going? and I think that's also the don't know where you're going when you take the left turn. There is no path for that left turn, right? It's like walking the unwalked path or paving a path that hasn't been walked upon yet. And I think that's what makes us excited and can freak the hell out of you. And we still go. And actually, the first thing that popped when you asked me that was I had this moment in high school that I could choose to continue the high school I was at, which is a Dutch high school, or to go to an international high school. And my dad was like, hey, you could choose. Your brother did it. You don't have to, because I know you're really happy in your school, but this would be really interesting and good for your future, probably, because it's international. Everything is in English. There are people from all over the world there, but it's up to you. And I was really like tormented, like, what do I choose? And I was talking to people who had been to that school and and one day I woke up and I just knew I had to go to that new school. I had no reason to leave my friends, but I knew that the choice was made, and I couldn't really explain it to anybody why. My dad got it though, and he was super excited that I chose it. And that choice really did change my life, because I went to a new school. And when you go to a new place, you can have a new start. There is no victory. And I was happy in the school I was at. So the friends I left felt left behind. And some of them didn't. They were just happy for me. And some of them just didn't get it. But it really, truly allowed me to get into a new space. And because it was an international school, it had kids from all over the world. And so my world opened up greatly in those last 3 years of high school. And truly, I would say it's where I started to get fostered in the difference of who I am, because that school was about kids who were all different and who didn't really belong, because many were expat kids with ambassador parents and who were looking for who they were, but they didn't belong, and they kept moving around, and it was a problem, but it wasn't really a problem. So it opened up a whole new space for me in that sense, as well as I was 16. It's the years where you start to like develop a bit of sense of self, and it really allowed me to explore myself in a different way. And the school itself was really very, very good. So I read things, I opened myself up to things. And I know that it opened up something in my life. So that would be my first big left turn that I can remember.
Well, one thing that I noticed from what you said is you described talking about it, thinking about it, weighing the pros and cons, and then you just woke up and you knew. And I
Exactly.
think that's a huge part of our left turns, is that we just know. And we
Yeah.
can't we don't have to justify it. But
Yeah, exactly.
that
Yeah,
sounds like you just knew you were going to have a greater and a bigger life, and you chose it, no matter what
exactly.
anybody else thought.
Exactly.
Yeah. And that to me is another thing, is just not worrying about the judgments of other people.
No, and not letting that controller stop you, right?
Yes. Yes.
Mm.
Well, I
Yeah,
get that that sort of set the tone for you doing left turns in your life. What
it
next?
did. Well, I think there's a bunch of them. One is I chose to study cultural anthropology, and I'm Indian. You're supposed to become an engineer or a doctor or maybe real estate or something. So I know my granddad was visiting and he was like, "What anthropology and why?" And it also didn't make sense, but there was an energy to it. I was very interested and always and still am in people and why they do what they do and their cultures and how they get how they create themselves in a group.
Yeah.
So that's what was curious to me, and definitely not a study that makes sense in terms of like now and then you do what with your life. And it was something I was like, this is what turns me on. And I was again lucky because my parents were like basically told my grandfather to leave me alone and to
Nice.
choose what I wanted to choose. So that was definitely a left turn because it was very undefined as a study and as a choice.
Mhm.
And again, added a lot to my life, added a lot to my life. And then I have to say, like, it's interesting, this question, Marilyn, because it makes us acknowledge the choices we've made that we haven't
Yes.
thought as big or relevant or anything really. So it's a
Mhm.
very great question. But that was a big one. And then I would say, after I finished my anthropology, I was doing research for TV and radio. And then I've always been dancing in my life. My mom had a dance school. I was part of her, was one of her naughtiest students and the most rebellious one and getting the one who was getting in trouble the most, but also started to help her in her school and lead classes and shows and blah, blah, blah. And then at a certain moment, I realized I wanted to dance more. And I chose to stop the other job and only dance. And that was one of those left choices that people were like, "You're a dancer, okay, but what do you do?" You know, that kind of thing. Like, "Yeah, okay, but what's your real job?" And you're like, "Well, what I've been doing for the last 8 hours, and the muscle ache and all this stuff." But so that was a big left turn again that I realized. I still remember the moment that I was in a project and I still remember the moment of the movement I was making. I had amazing musicians from London and I was in this piece and I was moving. It was the first rehearsal day. And I still remember going, "Oh, this feels so good. Why would I want to not do this? Why would I choose something different? Why would I not go for it?" You know, it was
Right.
really this, "Oh my God, this is such bliss. Let's go." And then I knew, because I was a bit like, "I don't know, with this job, I should do it. It's a real job. Yeah, 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 yeah." And then suddenly I was like, "Okay, let's go." So I started to do full-time dancing. So that's the left turn for sure that I
Yes.
made. And then at a certain moment, I chose to start to create my own work. So I had been doing classical work and I started to create my own classical work and I was touring and all that stuff. But there was a moment that I was like, I want to really do something that's mine, not, even within the tradition, but like out of the tradition and really like break those
Wow.
rules and just find my voice, let's say, in movement and in choreography. So I guess that's kind of a left turn.
That's a huge left turn to be original. I mean,
Yeah,
I'm going to be me and originate what's true and what works for me and what expresses
yeah,
me. I think that's huge.
yeah,
Huge.
it's true. And it's funny because many people are like, "What did your mom say?" Because she's from the classical dance world. And my mom has always been super open and also honest. So she'll be like, I don't like that thing that you did, but the other thing was amazing. And she would be honest, but she wouldn't have to like say everything was great. She would always be honest, but would be very encouraging. Or she'll just say, I don't understand at all what you're doing, but it's amazing, so go for it. So it was always the sense of I could choose what I wanted to choose, and I'm extremely lucky with the parents I chose in that way. And yeah, so that opened up a whole new pathway, because I was going within the undefined. I went to the next level of undefinedness. And in the Netherlands, there was nobody who was doing Indian dance on a professional level till I started to do that. And then nobody was doing anything contemporary till I started to do that. So there was no role models or so I was like my own pioneer, which I had moments of like, oh my God, it's really difficult. And because I had this idea that I needed to follow somebody and there was nobody to follow. But obviously that was not actually my problem.
No, it was
actually
not.
no, but I bought into this idea like, oh, it's so difficult, I'm all alone. And then I was like, well, nobody's doing it, so I guess I just have to do it. And started to create my own work, and got invited to be part of a theater as an artistic associate, let's say. And so the next left turn was
Okay,
a
I'm
big
going to
one.
stop you 1 minute, because I want to ask you a different question.
Please.
The way you talk about it, Kalpana, it's like, oh, I just did it. I just did it. I just did it. Which I get on the one hand, because you did just do it. Did you? But I think people are like, yeah, well, that's Kalpana. I have doubts and I might fail, and maybe this piece wasn't good. And could you say a little bit about going through some of that?
Absolutely, because that was really there was definitely doubt, or I'm crazy. Or I don't know what the hell I'm doing, and I don't know what I'm doing, and maybe I shouldn't do this, and if this is wrong. And definitely had it, but one of the things I can see is that there was always this sense of like, why shouldn't I do it, kind of thing. Or
Nice.
And this, I wouldn't call it purpose, but the sense of possibilities. And I remember going to many shows going, oh, wow, I wish that I could have, and it would seem like a dream that was a really cool dream, but definitely not a possibility and a reality for me in the future. And I started to go like, why not? Like, why would that be so far away from me? And I think that's something that I might not have been cognizant about, but I know that there was always this excitement about that energy. But for sure filled with doubt. And I would say with dance a lot, because there's a lot of judgment in the art world. There's a lot of judgment in the art world. So there's judgment about how you move, about your body, about what you make, about why you make it, about a lot of things. If it's classical, not classical, doesn't matter what context and category. Judgment is like one of the heartbeats of that field. And that's not really fun. And I would say it helped me get used to having that energy and not letting that stop me.
That's amazing, because you're right. I think the arts are one of the most judged, however you're expressing it, dance, painting, or music, whatever it is. Exactly. But thank you for that, because it makes it more possible for people. And I love that you said, why not? Because a lot of us say, oh, I can't because. So thank you for that part of that. I mean,
thank you, Marilyn, for the question. And I also had moments that I would see somebody else be greater than me, and it would, I would say, even make me a bit hopeless. That I would be like, oh my God, she's there and she's also there. And like, when would I get? I'm not gonna get it. And I would be all like about it. And then I would be like, but I'm comparing. Like that's so, but I would definitely fall into that trap of seeing people like let's say, I wouldn't even call it success, but like getting to the places that I would like, or doing things that I was like, oh, and instead of allowing that to inspire me, I would sometimes get into this black hole of like, well, why am I even trying? Like they're doing it already and stuff like that. And then going, but why would that mean that I can't?
Yes, I love that. You go on. Are you comparing where we have to go down a level, or are you being inspired? That's brilliant. Thank you. Yeah.
And I think that's I've had definitely many moments of like, let's call it despair, and then putting myself down for not being where somebody else is. You know, sometimes you see somebody younger and you're like, you just started dancing and you're already, hey. And instead of going, holy fuck, I'll have it, I'd be like, well, you know, maybe I should stop. And then I would also catch myself and be like, okay, are you over that? Let's choose something different. Yeah.
I love that. That's great. Holy fuck, I'll have it. That should be the theme song.
Right?
Okay, that was a little side trip, but I get that that's going to be very helpful to people. So
I hope so. And it's really where we can choose the hole or the lift, you know?
yes,
And the flying is much more fun than the black hole.
yes, it is. And you're definitely a flyer. So
Exactly.
all right,
Yeah.
so going back to left turns.
Well, I think that the one that was very interesting and it brought up a lot of stuff was when I was part of this theater and I started to see that their agenda was not really in my favor. Like I had done what I had to do for them, and then I became like a ornament, like, oh yeah, colored person, check, you know, but not, I was not really getting empowered anymore. I learned so much, and then at some moment, time was up actually, and
Yes.
I knew I had to leave, but I, let's say, didn't know what to do or how to do this, and I had to really kind of wait for that left turn moment. I had to, I knew it wasn't today, but it was soon, but I don't know how soon is soon. And there was this energy of like, I need to move on. And then there was one thing that occurred, we had a meeting and blah, blah, blah. And suddenly I was like, it's time to go. And it was this moment when I got that energy. Every 4 years, you can apply for funding for 4 years.
Oh,
And I was like, I should apply for my own funding instead of wait for the funding of the theater. And it was one of those moments in the art world where it was like, be happy if you have money, because hold on to your horses. And I was like, I can't hold on to these horses. They're not my horses anymore. And it was one of those moments where people were really like, you're insane to leave them. You know, you have something to hold on to, and at least it's good. It's not so bad. And I chose to not do it. I chose to take that left turn and start my own company and ask for funding immediately for 4 years. And the amazing thing is we got our money and they didn't get all their money.
wow.
And I really was like, holy fuck, if I would not have taken that turn, I would have really been really like, wow, because they would have not been able to support me actually if I would have stayed. So that was super interesting.
And super knowing what you required, even though it was something off of a cliff. Yeah.
Yeah, it was very cliffy.
But that's incredible. Yeah, going out on your own like that. And you still have the company, correct?
Yeah, I still have the company. And when I started Access Consciousness, I didn't have a company. I had just started I had just started like actually around that a year after I became, it was really, I got to know Access. I was connected to this theater. So as I was growing with Access and getting the tools and applying them, things were changing. And I was able to make that choice of, you know what, time's up and this is lighter. And I guess I'm turning left and let's go. Yeah. Yeah. And I think the thing is that doubt can creep in and many of the doubts don't belong to you, right? I know that my parents were like, what are you doing? Like, oh my God, you're the only one, you're one of the few who have like this, you know, solid place. And is it smart? And they'll get upset and all that stuff. And they weren't stopping me, but they were really shocked. And many people were shocked. And you always have the choice to not let that doubt get to you. And right,
And
like it's not like doubt free. Yeah, you'll hear different voices and you can get like all dizzy from those voices.
Yeah.
And then it's really like, okay, and now what? In the end of the day, you're the one doing what you're doing for your life. Nobody else is going to do that, whatever that action is, like from putting a banana in your mouth, even though you might be getting spoon fed, to like, you know, taking your car, like you're the one. So it's also like people will tell you stuff, but you're the one putting that into action. And so that's where like I'm also like, don't let that doubt stop you, or those confusing voices or voices overrule and override what that inner voice, what you know. Yeah.
I think that's beautiful, Kalpana. Thank you so much. You are having, not had, this amazing life of left turns. And I know you will keep on being aware of what works for you and being an inspiration to all of us, to all people, for
Thank you, Marilyn.
choosing what actually works and what is going to create greater. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining this episode of Left Turn. I wonder what embracing left turns could create in your life. What magical possibilities might show up. Remember, when you choose left turns, you are joining a group of the most creative and brilliant people the world has ever known.